everybody's subject to the law. And I thought that the president was trying to steal an election. It was clear to me that this was going to jeopardize U.S. national security. It was squarely in my portfolio, as in a very, very serious position of very serious responsibility. And if I didn't do something about it, nobody else would. And we could have ended up in a completely different world. We could have ended up in a world in which, the president's rival was tarnished, and we could have had back-to-back administrations.
You are listening to the Mayday Network.
Alex Vindman, it is such a pleasure and an honor to have you here. Of all the people that we've talked about having on this podcast, you are somebody who's been on our wish list for so long, for so many different reasons, from your incredible service to this country to now your continuing incredible service to this country to your being a narc on Larry David and narking out Larry, which we are going to get to in a moment. Yeah. But thank you so much for joining us here today.
Good to be here with you, Julie, and looking forward to the conversation.
I want to just start by talking about what the hell you're thinking after having a Purple Heart and all the years of combat and all the years of the military and, of course, everything you went through during the first Trump administration to want to continue service as opposed to just lying on a beach and drinking Mai Tais and enjoying your daughter and your wife. What
is that line from Godfather? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Certainly my wife, Rachel, thought we had done our share. We moved to Florida to start a different chapter,
right.
Get away from politics, to be clear. And I think the fact is that the same urgencies that drove me to report corruption at the highest level and damn the consequences were the same urgencies that compelled me to jump into this race. I think that we are underserved. I think that the folks in Florida, 23 million of us, third largest state in the country, do not have any representation. We have my opponent, Ashley Moody, who is in the pockets of special interests, has taken buckets of money from big insurance companies. And as a result, we have the highest insurance rates in the country. They keep multiplying. Somebody that's happy to sign on to billionaire tax cuts. And while 1.5 million folks in Florida lose Affordable Care Act subsidies and lose access to insurance, it becomes too expensive, happy to cut Medicaid. And I'm fighting for folks like my dad, who's turning 94 this year. Mom, 79. He's retired, lives 10 minutes down from me in the adjacent community, and I'm paying half of his rent in order for him to be able to survive in Florida with costs soaring and those being passed on to homeowners and renters. I'm fighting for my daughter. She's 15. She's finishing up 9th grade. 3 years from now, she turns 18 and has some big decisions to make about where she goes to next. And she's our only child, and I want her to stay with dad or close to dad. So unless we do some really fix the direction the state is headed in, make sure that she has rights to make decisions about how she wants to live her life, an affordable place to live, a place with opportunities, a place where it's a state of 23 million, the fourth largest economy, 1.7 trillion. She should be able to do anything she wants. Yeah. But jobs are under pressure, and unless I do something about it, she might choose to go somewhere else, like too many young folks are doing in Florida now, or old folks that are being priced out and are fixed income. So I'm fighting for people like my daughter, like my parents, like so many other folks in Florida that are under enormous pressure in a system that's fixed for a billionaire class, for corporate interests, by corrupt career politicians like my opponent, Ashley Moody.
Yeah, it's interesting because for those of us who live in New York, we see so many people for decades moving down to Florida. It's more affordable with the sunshine. It's just a easier, better way of life. And then what I'm hearing from people in Florida who move down there is it's actually not that much more affordable down there. And I think part of that is, of course, because all of these federal issues that are impacting people are not necessarily limited to just the blue states. If you're in a nursing home in Florida, guess what? This the Affordable Care Act is gone, but basically this big, beautiful bill, so-called, is going to make sure that you're not going to be able to put your father in a nursing home should he ever need it. I hope he doesn't. But the point is, there are plenty of elderly people in Florida, more than anywhere else in the country. They can't afford to go to these nursing homes anymore. And they won't, certainly after this election, which is when it kicks in, right?
Yep, I think that's right. So that what people, the older folks that are on Medicaid have not yet felt the effects. They're on the horizon, and it's already a group of folks that are under enormous pressure on fixed incomes. The prices of renting or living in a home in Florida keep multiplying. Homeowners insurance, the most expensive in the country, that doesn't stay with just the homeowners. That gets passed on by landlords to renters. On average, 37% of monthly income for a renter goes to pay rent. So those are costs. Costs around utilities are surging. Again, my opponent's happy to take money from the utility companies and allow costs to get passed on to ordinary folks. She did that as Attorney General. The fact that this woman signs on to, for the 8th time, she gave a pass to this administration for a war with Iran that is crushing so many people in Florida, with gas prices that have increased by 50% from somewhere around $3 to over $4.50 as a result of this foolish war, this poorly executed war, a war that is deeply misaligned with the priorities of this country and with an America First agenda or a Florida First agenda. Those costs, grocery costs, those are making it untenable for folks in Florida. So my commitment is to, I'm not taking a dime from any corporate PACs. I'm not beholden to any rigid ideology. I'm running as a Democrat to make sure that we provide better services and deliver for ordinary people. And my goal is to make sure that we have representation. That is not the case right now. So it is an honor to be in this position after a career of public service. You asked me why.
Yeah.
I'm in a position where I could do an enormous amount of good as a U.S. Senator. And I can't sit on the sidelines, and I want to be able to deliver better for the people of Florida.
I want to ask you about that because you and I have something in common. You and I talked about this offline before we started this podcast, but you and I are both Soviet refugees, and we both came here, it turns out, within 6 months of each other, 5 months of each other. I think I'm a few years older than you, but we were both kids and had parents who did something that was extraordinarily courageous, which is that they saw a awful situation for their children. You have a brother. I was an only child.
Yeah.
I'm an only child. And they decided that they needed to do what they could to get their kids out of an impossibly terrible situation. And we were lucky. We were 2 of the lucky ones, 3 of the lucky ones, if you count your brother as well, because we were able to get out at a time when the Iron Curtain was certainly not letting a lot of people out. I've always said that I really haven't been afraid of doing anything in my life, because when you go through something that frightening, that traumatic as a kid, at a really foundational time of your life, nothing else is scary. Like, there's nothing else that's scary. And yet you did something that I think, especially for somebody who spent his life in the military, where you just, you follow orders and things have a cadence to them.
Yeah.
You did something during the first Trump administration, which, if there's anything that might be equally scary or even scarier than what you went through as a child, it is that you stood up and blew the whistle on the President of the United States, which is, and I don't want to overstate it, but in the history books of this country, very, very few people have.
Yeah.
Tell me about that process, because that's just like, was that scary to you? Was it just something that you've had to do because it was part of your responsibility and duty as an American, as a soldier? Like, what was the thought process of getting from, holy shit, I can't believe what I'm hearing on the perfect, quote unquote, perfect phone call, to, I'm going to speak up, I'm going to blow the whistle on the President of the United States? You're commander in chief, by the way. You're in the military at the time.
Exactly right. But it was my duty to do that. Nobody gets a pass. Everybody's subject to the law, and I thought that the president was trying to steal an election. It was clear to me that this was going to jeopardize U.S. national security. It was squarely in my portfolio. I was in a very, very serious position of very serious responsibility, and if I didn't do something about it, nobody else would. And we could have ended up in a completely different world. We could have ended up in a world in which, you know, the president's rival was tarnished, and we could have had back-to-back administrations, you know.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned something very interesting, and I talked to young folks about it. I talked to people about it. We are probably blessed with perspective. We have the perspective of fleeing an authoritarian regime, fleeing anti-Semitism, coming here as Jewish refugees. And then I served 21 plus years in uniform. I was an infantry officer, airborne ranger, jumped out of planes, served in combat in 2004, was wounded by an Iranian roadside bomb, served in embassies later in my career in Kiev, Ukraine, in the early years before this full-scale war started. So 2009, 2010, then served in embassy in Moscow, representing my country, defending this nation, recognizing that we had something unique here in the United States, a democracy that survived and weathered all sorts of storms over 250 years. And that perspective counseled that my own personal ambitions, my own personal concerns, should be irrelevant. The stakes are too high. I didn't feel like I had much of an option to sit on the sidelines and give anybody a free pass. So I did what I thought was right, reported corruption. It wasn't just simply, folks should maybe understand that I wasn't just happening to sit in on a phone call and that was the beginning and end of the story. I was in a position where I was responsible for the relationships between the U.S. and Russia and Ukraine and a bunch of other countries in my portfolio. And, I certainly saw this scheme unfold over the course of months. I warned against it. I did my best to make sure that, the administration, the first Trump administration was aware that this was going to be harmful to U.S. national security. They dismissed my counsel. The scheme unfolded, and I reported it and then testified in front of Congress. I mean, that sounds, in a lot of ways, it was a pretty simple thing to do.
Is there any question in your mind that this was an idea that the Russians put in the president's head?
So I'm not. I don't know if they necessarily did do that. I think this was an administration, a first administration that was looking for an edge, and was happy to try to steal an election. The same thing that they've done repeatedly, that they're likely to do in the midterms, and same playbook, old dog, no new tricks. And I think that it was a scheme. A simple, basic scheme from an administration that could care less about democracy and rule of law and the way our system had been working with free and fair elections. What's troubling to me is, frankly, a party now, and for me, it's my opponent, Ashley Moody, that is happy to give a pass to corruption, to abuse of power, happy to just sign on to all the chaos of whether that's a war with Iran without asking tough questions about why we're there, what's the objective, does this help secure the U.S., shouldn't our resources be better, shepherded to deliver for America, giving a pass to tariff policies that have been a tax levied on each family to the tune of $2,500, giving a pass to, raids in our cities from paramilitaries that are riling up and driving discord and abusing populations, giving a pass to large corporations that are making money hand over fist, instead of making sure that she, in her role as Attorney General, was representing the interests of the people. So that's to me the startling part, is to have this level of kind of unprincipled actor. And I think I make a pretty good contrast to that.
Yeah, I mean, the question I guess I have about Iran, since you brought it up, is, do you have a sense that there's anybody in this administration. I used to, full disclosure, I used to work with Pete Hegseth when I worked at Fox. Like there are days when I wake up at 3:00 in the morning and thoughts go through my head like, holy God, I cannot believe Pete Hegseth is in charge of guys like you used to be. But is there any doubt, is there any concept that this administration has any plan or ever had any plan for what would happen? I mean, they obviously were sold a bill of goods that they're going to go in, the Iranians are going to greet them as liberators, and the Iranian regime was going to fold. Yep. It's not that long ago that we had the same kind of concept happen in Iraq. It's not that. I mean, certainly in all of our memory.
Or the Russians had with regards to Ukraine.
Right. And
just the wildest of miscalculations. That is a testament to a lack of competence, a lack of experience, a lack of basic know-how, leadership, where you might not have the answers to everything, but as a leader that you do have folks that have lots of experience, expertise, ideas that you should take counsel from in order to make your own decisions up. None of that exists. And, it's understandable, again, in the context of if you could act with impunity, if there are no guardrails, if the Senate, if the Republican Party gives you a pass, then why should you, perform to a higher standard?
And everything. I mean, literally, and everything. And I think Tom Friedman wrote a column on this, but it's something that I've kind of thought about for a long time, which is why not, other than just complete and utter hubris and this antipathy that Trump has had towards Zelensky, going back to certainly your experience.
Sure.
Why not have otherwise called Zelensky and said, hey, by the way, you guys have been fighting off a much larger, much more powerful army for the last 4 or 5 years now. What lessons could we learn? Because the Iranians clearly have figured out some lessons from Ukraine that we never learned. I can't imagine, as somebody who was in the army, who certainly had the kind of experience that you have militarily, sitting around and saying, I can't believe these fools are running the military here, right?
I think it's consistent. Military is close to home, having served in the Army for 21 and a half years. But it's consistent really across all branches of government. The Department of Homeland Security, that is not securing the homeland, not focused on kind of a set of tasks around border security, but abusing a population. Health and Human Services, that is abandoning basic science to secure our population. It's the Department of Education. It's every branch. Incompetent people, unqualified people that should be checked by a co-equal branch of government, the legislative branch, in the House, in the Senate, asking tough questions about how this delivers for the American people. And that's not happening. And therefore, you have the chaos that we're witnessing of the day. So, with regards to the Department of Defense and lessons learned around Iran, yes, but this is in part, this is actually a problem that transcends administrations. We tend to be pretty slow to learn. I think that we should have been learning more under the previous administration. This war between Russia and Ukraine started in 2022. It was a couple years old. We should have been learning something about drone warfare and making, bolder adjustments. And we didn't do that. There was an element of hubris that said, well, we don't fight that way. It turns out that everybody's going to be compelled to fight this way and defend against drones, mass drone swarms, and these kinds of challenges. So I think, having some basic competence, some experience, intellectual curiosity, independent-minded, not driven by parochial interests, whether that's self-enrichment. Those should be kind of like the floor.
Yeah.
Our basic expectations. That's not a high bar. Those are the basic expectations we should have for our leadership, and unfortunately, that's not the case.
So let's say, and I have every expectation this is going to happen. You are an extraordinary candidate. There's polling out there that shows that you're either tied or slightly in the lead. It's that kind of environment. Florida's ripe. I mean, I know that everybody's talking about Texas. I don't know why they're talking about Texas, because actually Florida to me is more ripe than Texas. But it's January 2nd of next year, and JT Vance, I'm sorry to say, will be administering the oath of office to you. And what's your priority? I mean, is your priority, like, you know, you talk to different candidates, and there are some candidates out there who are like, nope, my priority is I want to get on the relevant committee that I'm going to either, you know, solve healthcare, or I'm going to solve the health and human services, whatever it is, right? In your case, maybe defense, armed services. But there are also people out there who are like, nope, I want oversight. We can't move on anything until we have accountability and we have oversight. And I want to drag, if you're in armed services, I want to drag Pete Hegseth in and say to him, not a penny more for any of your priorities unless you're gone, Mr. President, like get a new Secretary of Defense or War, whatever he calls himself now. You know, some people say, I want Kristi Noem in the dock, or maybe not Kristi Noem, she's not there anymore, but, you know, Mark Way Mullen, because of everything going on across the river here in Delaney Hall. Certainly you've got people starving themselves to death because of what's going on. Awful. And senators.
And un-American.
Un-American. For those of us who come from a certain part of the European world, remember full well what it's like when people get locked up based on who they are. I mean, just incredibly terrifying. You have United States Senator Andy Kim, one of your future colleagues.
He's excellent.
Pepper sprayed yesterday for doing nothing more than just doing his constitutional duty and checking in on his constituents. So where's your head on this? Like, how do you see it?
Two things.
Okay.
Two things I need to deliver.
Okay.
This is a special election. My opponent, Ashley Moody, was appointed into this role. She's going to serve, less than 2 years, because we're going to win this race, and we're going to kick her to the curb. So I'm going to have 2 years left, and so I need to demonstrate that I can deliver in those 2 years in order to run for a full 6-year term. The two things I need to deliver I have to address the fundamental question of how do we end the chaos, how do we crush corruption, and how do we cut costs. So guardrails, accountability, making sure our system works as designed, where you've got a senator that's making sure that the executive branch is fulfilling its legal obligations, following the law, holding them to account when they're failing to follow the law, asking tough questions about war and war powers, tariffs. That is a legislative function. Tariffs are in the purview of the Senate. If I could go ahead and institute some guardrails and make sure the system works as our founding fathers is designed, that's a huge step forward. So that's accountability. That's the same thing that your other folks are concerned about with oversight. The other thing has to be concrete about costs. Unless we could provide some immediate relief on costs, then there is no motivation or reason for folks that are not ideologically driven, that are not driven by Democrat or Republican, that are independents, that are not, in Florida, we call them non-politically aligned. You register as non-politically aligned. We're talking about 22% or more of the electorate that could care less and are mainly focused on day-to-day putting food on the table, but are struggling to do that now because they have to make a decision between food on the table or fuel in a car. If we can't deliver some relief on costs, then I don't think the Democratic Party has earned its place for re-election in 28. So for me, I'm focused on making sure we take back control of tariff policy. If we do that, we end a tax on every single family to the tune of $2,500. If we are much, much more judicious with and holding the administration to account with regards to the use of force, then we don't have shocks to not just the economy, but to people's budgets. We don't have a 50% increase in gas prices, grocery prices, utilities. Every one of these inputs is in part affected by this war with Iran. And this choke point, this area that the Iranians have exercised control over, the Strait of Hormuz, we could do immediate good there. But then there's also bigger picture ideas like how do we get insurance market under control? I think if we bolster the insurance companies, we provide them some support so that they could stay in Florida, just like the National Flood Insurance Program. This one would be to make sure that big insurance companies stay in Florida, compete against each other in a market economy to drive down costs. That's a huge factor. Those are the types of things I'm thinking about. And if you're curious about my policies, I just published a policy page on alexvindman.com that'll lay out what we're thinking about all these different issues and it's all oriented about cutting costs and fighting corruption.
So what's up with Ashley Moody? Because she got there. She's in the majority. I get that she's the low woman in the totem pole, but nevertheless, she's in the majority, and they'll do whatever she wants because they want her to win. Where is she, in your mind, like where has she most failed Florida? Where has she not done what she had to do from day one to prove, because she only did have less than 2 years to get it done?
So I think she has done nothing to provide relief on homeowners insurance. Utility prices have gone up. Costs for goods have gone up because she's happy to give a pass to this administration with regards to wars. And this is the 7th conflict that this administration has been involved in, used force.
I heard they solved 8 though, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's right. I think that the problem with Ashley Moody is that she's not driven by a public servant's mindset, a public servant's heart. She's driven by her own ambitions. She's driven by the fact that she gets funding into her coffers from corporate interests that ultimately compromise her decision making. So how do you serve on the Health Services Committee and still trade big pharma stock when you have access to insider information? That's just plain wrong.
Yeah.
How do you, as one of your first functions in the Senate, execute a couple $1 million in trades on insider information only Congress gets? That should be illegal.
I don't know, do people even get how corrupt that is? I mean, like, it's insane that Congress people have access to do this kind of thing, and it's a bipartisan problem, by the way. Like, it's just astonishing to me that the rest of us would probably be, if there was actually a functioning, SEC or we refer to the Justice Department, and yet these guys do it every single day. It's unbelievable.
I think that's right, and to me, it's a pretty stark contrast with. I'm not taking a penny from any corporate PACs. I am not ideologically driven or ideologically motivated. If you take a look at my record, I've been critical of both parties when appropriate. My task is to deliver for the people of Florida, represent their interests, answer their call. There is nobody that's really going to answer your call in Florida today. You'll get some nonsensical form letter that says thank you for reaching out, but nobody's going to address your concerns. So that's what I'm looking to deliver for Florida.
Democratic leaders doing enough, you think, to stand up to what's going on right now? Like, is this a leadership team that you'd want to support if you were there?
Well, it's interesting. There are plenty of superb leaders. Andy Kim is a good example.
But he's not in leadership.
He's a leader by the mere fact that he is a senator, one of 100, in a position of enormous responsibility. There are lots of good leaders. One of the benefits, one of the privileges I've had after being forced out of the military is helping get veterans elected and national security types elected around the country. They are today's leaders, and they are the future leaders of the party and of the nation. So to me, what is most important is to have folks that are thinking about, are going to advance my cause of ending the chaos, crushing corruption, cutting costs, figuring out how to deliver for Florida. Those are the folks that I'm interested in supporting for leadership positions in the party and in the Senate.
It's interesting because you mentioned national security. You're both a veteran and also certainly a national security official because you were in the NSC when all of this happened in your career. Did you know that your career was going to kind of screech to a halt once you reported? Did you hope that maybe it wouldn't?
I hoped it wouldn't.
Right.
I was under no illusion that if the president didn't change course, that it would almost certainly result in an impeachment. I kind of I wrote about it in my book that I walked into my twin brother's office, said, if the president doesn't change course, this could lead to an impeachment. But I did think maybe I doing the right thing might allow me to weather the storm, and maybe I was a little bit too idealistic in that regard. But I have no regrets about the decisions I made or the actions I took.
Do you think there's an Alex Vindman, after all the years that have gone by since your situation happened, if somebody were on the NSC right now and saw that happen? First of all, I don't even know if they have anybody in the NSC who's independent anymore, but let's assume that there is somebody there. Do you think that person would ever assume, because you had the assumption that I think all of us did. I remember the first few years, people kept saying, well, the presidency will change him, and maybe the presidency, like, do you think there's any possibility now that anybody would think that they'd have to really make a very explicit choice? Not just, by the way, not just your career, your twin brother's career. Like this.
Baby brother. He's 9 months younger.
Yeah, your baby brother.
I mean, that's a lifetime wisdom in those 9 minutes.
He's been trying to live up to you all these years.
He's got a lot to learn.
He's just in the House. You'll show him how it's done when you're in the Senate.
Right, that's
Go ahead. But yeah.
It's interesting. I think that, look, first of all, I have no regrets about the actions I've taken. I thought I was doing what's in the best interest of this country, and what my moral compass drove me to do. And Vindmans don't tend to look backwards. We look forward. As to whether there are folks I think there are lots of superb public servants still out there, still toiling away in their roles in obscurity, trying to deliver for U.S. national security, navigating an administration that is not driven by advancing national security, but driven by, a corrupt interests, self-service. I don't know how many folks are left in the National Security Council, because they've basically, almost burned that place down with lots of firings. But these are institutions that are going to be critical in the aftermath of this administration, that they are there, that they are functioning, that we bring in the best and brightest to serve this nation and to carry forward a program that delivers security and delivers prosperity.
How do you rebuild that? I just want to ask you about that, because I don't, like, you think about the enormity of what needs to be done when this is all over, and hopefully it'll be over in a couple of years. But yet there's been such a brain drain. It's almost like, you had the Soviet brain drain of all these brilliant people leaving the Soviet Union during the collapse. And so, like, it'll take generations, right, to rebuild?
I think that...
like, you're not going back. I mean, but think of all the years of experience that you have, that your brother has. Now, granted, he's in Congress now, so it's a little different. But people like you would have probably still been there and probably still been serving.
Probably, yeah. I would say this. I would say that it is chipping away at making sure that we have the best and brightest in these roles. But we have a big military. We have largely appropriately sized government that is delivering for the American people, for either security or services to the U.S. government. There was an opportunity in the aftermath of this administration to figure out, what was broken and needed to be fixed. So we don't have to replace one for one what was lost, but maybe reimagine and put back institutions that are more functional for the 21st century. Again, I think about, like, the future, not necessarily learn the lessons of the past, but figure out how to deliver for the future. And I'm confident that we will both be able to recruit a next generation of wonderful leaders, because we have lots of young folks that could recommit to public service, especially if they see, well modeled behavior by national security leaders, folks coming out of military backgrounds that are willing to pitch in. I'm confident that we have a large enough military. For instance, if we look at National Security Council as a microcosm, those folks are drawn out of the State Department, they're drawn out of the Department of Defense, they're drawn out of the intelligence community. That there are lots of folks in those roles with deep expertise that the day after could, you could start looking in to fill the role and rebuild the National Security Council. Other institutions are going to take a longer time to build, like, figuring out what the next version of U.S. aid is, figuring out, what health and human resources is. What's good is that we have lots of superb doctors and researchers and scientists that are, ready and waiting in the wings to step back in and to deliver for the American people. I think these folks are out there. It's going to take a lot. I think what it's going to take more time might be the fact that we will have to rebuild our credibility around the world.
Yeah,
that is going to be a huge challenge.
Do people because you worked obviously with NATO for so long. To me, like, if I'm any of our European allies, I look at us and I think, okay, one time was an aberration. You don't really know what you were getting into. But the second time was a pattern, and so once Donald Trump is gone,
Yeah.
how do we trust the United States again? How do we know it's not going to happen? I think about all of these people who are probably intelligence assets of ours, who I would be terrified right now if I were still out in the field.
I think that those are some of those features are going to take a long time to recover from. What I do sense is that the U.S. is still the preeminent power. There are rising powers. There are threats on the horizon, and that our partnerships with fellow democracies, they have been damaged. But our European allies in particular, fellow democracies, will look for reasons to partner with the U.S. Will look for reasons to partner with a future administration that believes in alliances, believes in standing up for fellow democracies instead of sidling up to adversaries like this administration is doing. And that in those types of situations, those are going to be very tenuous at first. We'll have to prove ourselves, but there'll be overtures immediately to figure out how to partner with a future administration, and then it's just going to take time to heal some wounds. But the first job is to bring back some principled leadership, to get rid of corrupt elected officials that are happy to deliver for themselves, to enrich, fail to do their jobs, and holding power to account. That's job number one. Once we demonstrate our ability with this upcoming election, when people power manifests in November, and we have a significant change in leadership, that will give room for the rest of the world to say, you know what, we have to weather these next couple of years with this administration, but there's something we could continue to work with the U.S. So step number one is delivering delivering my Senate seat, delivering these wins, and then that opens up. The clouds don't automatically part, and birds start singing. It's going to be a difficult next couple of years. It will be a challenging, relationship at loggerheads, but we still need to figure out how to get some things done. And then after that, we have the opportunity to rebuild. And take this country in a different direction.
Yeah, let me ask you quickly, because we don't have much time left, but I do want to ask you, because you'll be the senator for Key West, which is only 90 miles north of Cuba.
Right.
What's going on? What should be going on? I mean, as we sit here on May 27th, and we're going to air this in the next couple of days. By then, I'm not sure what's going to be going on in Cuba. I mean, what's your view about what's going on down there? What should be happening down there? What they're doing right? What they're not doing right?
Yeah. The first thing is absolutely clear. What this administration is considering, what they've done with regards to Venezuela, just eliminate Maduro, but leave a authoritarian regime in place. What they thought that they might do with regards to Iran at various points, they had wishful thinking about regime change. That didn't happen, so then they were trying to put in a friendly regime, but otherwise leave Iran intact in the hands of the Ayatollahs. That kind of half measure is not going to be sufficient. It is not going to satisfy the desires of the Cuban people. It is not going to satisfy the desires of Cuban Americans that want real transformation towards democracy. Even within the Cuban community, there are folks that are thinking about a world in which there's a real democratic transformation. That is not what this administration is looking at right now. They're looking at a friendly regime in place. So I hope that they've been warned off by their foolish actions with Iran and their mismanagement, and that they don't look to open up another war in our own backyard. It's unclear. Again, my opponent, Ashley Moody, has given a complete pass for this administration to conduct its failed policies with regards to Iran. She's on board with what there are these half measures with regards to Cuba. I hope that they're as hard-headed as they are, as long as as painful as a process it is for them to learn, that they don't think that this tool of force is going to be the magic that allows for democratic transformation in Cuba. I'm skeptical of this administration being able to use force and achieve that kind of outcome, and of any solution that leaves this regime in place. And puts a figurehead at the top.
I kind of, I was watching Godfather 2. Speaking of Godfather, you're talking about Godfather 3 before. This is Godfather 2, where you're kind of that scene where they're in the casino in Havana, and all of a sudden, the Castro regime is coming in. And to me, it's almost like Trump probably thinks of Cuba becoming another Atlantic city, Havana becoming like there's no concept of democracy, right? It's just going back from as they are doing with Maduro. It's like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It just so happens to be they're getting rid of Castro and replacing him with whoever, Donald Trump wants to put in there.
But at minimum, in the state of Florida, there should be a senator that says, what does day 2 look like?
Yeah.
What does, day 30 look like? What happens if we don't score an immediate win with regards to regime change? What happens when there are mass refugee flows? What happens if we need to put boots on the ground? Asking those tough questions. There isn't anybody doing that. There's somebody saying, thank you, sir, may I have another?
That's a great point. You're about to have massive rafts coming over to Florida potentially again.
Yeah.
And what are they going to do? Put them in internment camps like they are with everybody else? Like, it's kind of insane, right? Yeah. So, listen, I've got to tell you, it is, first of all, I wanted to say about your wife, Rachel Vindman, who, as brave as you are, she is fierce.
She's a badass.
She really is a badass. She is a force of nature.
Yeah.
And so she's such a pleasure. If people don't know Rachel Vindman, follow her on social media because she's hilarious and she's a badass and she's great.
Somebody responded to, she posted something recently and one of the response in the comments was like, you slay so hard.
She does.
She does.
Are people like, are you Rachel's husband? Like, I'm sure they're probably not like, are you like Alex's wife?
She's a badass. People were like, oh, yeah, like I want to meet Rachel.
She's awesome. Yeah, she's awesome. How's she doing with this whole campaign? How's your daughter doing with this whole thing?
She's, Rachel is a military spouse. Yeah. We went over 20 years in March. I think the decisions around this campaign were, made for some of the maybe one of the toughest weeks or two in our marriage, because she had a valid point about the fact that we had delivered for this country. We had done our part, and maybe it was time to do something else. And I said, honey, the stakes are too high. If we don't change course, it's going to crush lots of our neighbors and our community. Life is only going to get harder, and there's an opportunity to change the world. Take it. So I think she's on board.
Yeah.
My daughter is awesome. She's very plugged in, a 15-year-old ninth grader, and I think she probably is reluctant to admit it, but Dad's probably kind of got some cool points every now and then.
I mean, your daughter, I guess, has been what, 10 years? Not 10 years, but it's been like 8 years. Your daughter's entire sentient life has really been about her dad taking chance after chance, right? Like, she probably thought you were a badass even before, even if she doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah, I think so. She's reluctant, but I think I was arguing with her about back then who was cooler, me or BTS. And she wouldn't give me any credit. And then at some point, one of her friends like, maybe in some ways your dad's cooler than BTS.
Oh, that's wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're cooler than K-pop, that's pretty.
That was before K-pop Demon Hunters and everything.
Are you letting her watch Curb? Did she see your episode on Curb?
I think she probably saw that episode in Curb. I think those are some of the funniest episodes of Curb.
Oh my God! First of all, that season of Curb was priceless, and your appearance. How did that work out? Like, how did that come about?
They reached out and
just randomly.
They reached out through my literary agent because I had a book coming out, and I actually declined it initially, and then ultimately Larry was, there was a suggestion that I should at least get on a Zoom call with Larry.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, yeah, that's cool.
Why'd you decline it?
Because it was back then when this was in like 21.
You're right.
Roughly a year, after I left, I was like, that's not like, that's not me.
It's not part of the brand.
Or something. I was taking myself too seriously. And ultimately when I agreed to do it was because Larry was both charming and we had a newborn niece that we hadn't seen yet,
Right.
and that they were going to fly me out there with my family, and so I was like, okay, I get to visit family.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
How long did that process take to film? How long?
It was a 3-day shoot,
That's
and
not bad.
then they invited me back for the actual like last episode of the season, the show finale. And Larry's a great, he's a great supporter. He's true to form.
Is he going to come in and do something for you? He's got to.
Maybe he has.
Oh, he has. Has he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
That's so great. Yeah, he's the best. And
get on my mailing list, and you could see.
I am going to get on your mailing list. I didn't know that.
You could get some new, fresh jokes.
I had no idea that Larry was doing stuff for you. That's great. Well, I'm the worst mother in the world because when my son was like 10, I let him watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. And my husband walks in and he goes, "What are you doing?" Like, it was the worst possible episodes too. He's like, "What are you doing?"
I think my daughter watched Aliens when she was like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I made the mistake of letting my son watch Game of Thrones when he was like 4, and therefore I'm still.
They seem to be doing okay.
We'll work it out. We'll pay the therapy bills eventually, right?
That's right.
It'll all work out one day when they're like cursing us, when they're dealing with stuff about what their parents let them watch. Alex, thank you so much. Really, this has been such a pleasure, and I am so glad you let me nerd out with you on foreign policy and everything that you're doing for Florida. I have, by the way, folks, if you want to donate to Alex, alexvindman.com, is that the best way to find
Exactly
you?
right. Donate, sign up to volunteer, take a look at our policy page. Be curious to hear your thoughts. But we are building a grassroots army to support this campaign. And of course, your contributions are essential to help us reach 23 million people. So
it's an expensive state to communicate in. I mean, people don't know that, but it takes a lot of money. It's like New York, LA, and Miami especially are just incredibly expensive to communicate in.
Definitely.
So you need to get as much money as possible. So please, even if it's $5 recurring every month, anything helps. And really be, I'm sure, appreciated.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go watch the Larry jokes. That's awesome. Alex,
Sounds
thank
good.
you.
Thanks.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Bye.
You are listening to the Mayday Network.